Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm your host, Lindsay Baroker, and I'm here with Jeffrey Poole and Joe Lalo. And today we have a guest. I know you guys gotten tired of hearing us talk amongst ourselves, so we're going to be talking to fellow science fiction and fantasy author Patty Jansen. She lives in Sydney, Australia. And as I was saying, she writes both science fiction and fantasy, so we'll ask her a little bit about her books. She's published over 15 novels, and she's sold short stories to magazines such as Analog, Embrain, Science Fiction Quarterly, SF Quarterly, and Aurellus. And I'll pretend I know how to pronounce those things. And she's also been a Writers of the Future. I'll have to ask how that went. You're in the anthology, so you must have. I'm not quite sure how that works, but won one of the contests or something like that. And her background is she trained as an agricultural scientist. So if you look in her stories, you'll find bits of science sprinkled throughout. And Patty knows I just totally lifted her whole bio from her Amazon page, so nothing original there. Her main works include Ambassador, a space opera thriller, For Queen and Country, an epic fantasy series, and the Ice Fire trilogy, dark fantasy. And we're going to ask her all about more on her books and what she's doing for marketing. And I think one of the reasons we want to have her on today is that I keep seeing her on keyboards. She's very prolific there, and she's mentioned more than once that she's actually sells pretty well on the other stores, not Amazon, but Kobo, Apple, and well, we'll get the details here. I'm going to go ahead. Do you want to say hi, Patty? I've been blabbing along here.
Hi. This is pretty accurate so far.
All right, well, you let us know if I get anything wrong there. I'm going to pass you to Jeffrey. He's going to do kind of the introduction segment, and hopefully we can find out a little bit more about your self-publishing story.
Hi, Patty. How you doing?
Hey, good.
I just wanted to say congratulations for having all those novels released. You clearly are quite prolific, and I appreciate that. I think all of us would like to strive to be that. So I have a question for you. Or would you like to tell us a little bit about your books and maybe the series you're most known for?
Actually, I write a lot of different things. I mean, science fiction and fantasy. I write hard science fiction. I write space opera, and while I was doing that, I had a really strange idea for a fantasy, which was like throw all science out the window and just write the story. That ended up being the Ice Fire trilogy, and it's actually outselling everything else that I've written, and especially on the other stores, which is what we're talking about today. Why? It's one of those things that I don't actually know why that sort of seemed to have captured people's imaginations. Probably also because when I first put it on and I first started self-publishing, the whole trilogy was already pretty complete, so I didn't really have to wait until the other books came out, so I could publish them in close succession, which I feel helped. So does that kind of answer your question a bit, or?
I believe it does. And actually, I just thought of a question based on that answer. You said you've written a book that you pretty much threw science right out the window. My question is, do you have any fans that like to question you on your decision to throw science out the window?
No, because I find that the people who read these books are pretty much well, they like the I suppose that when you write the fantasy, it's pretty much a given that it won't really have a lot of rigorous science. And although there are people who read both, I find that there are people who will read fantasy, and then there are people who will read my science fiction. And I was always much more successful in selling the hard science fiction. I've got stories published in Analog. I've always been selling the hard science fiction traditionally, and I just wanted to do something different. And yeah, I mean, not really, because when you publish a fantasy, it's pretty much clear that there's not going to be an awful lot of science.
Okay, let me ask you this: how long have you been writing?
Since I started taking it seriously in 2004. which is a kind of a personal story, because in 2003 my father died, and he had cancer, and he was someone who was very creative, and he wanted to do. There were so many things he still wanted to do, and he never got to do. I had published and written non-fiction, and I thought, I always wrote fiction when I was at university, and I thought, well, I want to do this again. I just want to give it a go, and so that was my impetus for starting writing. But I didn't really publish anything for a long time. As Lindsay will know, I hung out at the science fiction and fantasy online writers workshop for about 4 years, and in that time everyone was still trying to sell to publishers, so that never really happened. So yeah, I suppose that might be another question about you know, how I came to self-publish. I don't know if you want to hear that now.
Actually, my next question would be, is did you even consider going traditional first or straight to self-publishing?
Well, yes, I did. And I sold a novel to a traditional press, and then I saw their contract, and I thought, not going to happen. Then I sold a novella to a traditional press. They just dicked around for so long that the contract ran out, and I took my novella and ran. And after that, I felt really, quite despondent about the whole thing. I started writing short stories for the science fiction, for the Writers of the Future, which I won. And then after that, I thought, well, I've achieved that now. I've got to do something else. So this is when I was writing the trilogy. I sent it to 5 agents, the trilogy. I got 3 requests for full manuscript. And 2 of those agents still have those manuscripts. This was in 2008, because of course the financial crisis happened, and nothing happened. Everyone was just sitting on their stuff. And at that point in time, I got a major revelation. I thought, what I'm trying to sell is not my manuscript. What I'm selling here is my ability to produce more. So by the time the whole world has pulled itself out of its financial crisis funk, I'll have, written another novel that I can sell to a traditional press. I'm just going to self-publish this and have fun. And basically after that, I really haven't looked back.
Very nice. Very good. That's cool. Now, you mentioned you were a member of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Online Workshop. Do you think that it's helped you as a writer, and would you possibly recommend for other authors to do that too?
I wish a lot more writers would do it. Because, at the moment I'm quite active on the Kindle boards. You see writers there coming, turning up, and they complain about getting bad reviews or having no sales, or, mind you, it's hard enough getting sales when you are doing all the right things. But if your manuscript's really subpar and you haven't learned to write, then it's going to be so much harder. You see these people, and it's really heartbreaking to see that they've just thrown up their first manuscript, and they're getting the reactions to it that basically it deserves, and they wouldn't have had if they had gone through a workshop process or something like that.
Now, you've written books in both sci-fi and fantasy. Was it always your plan to do it in both genres there, or did you just find that your taste broadened over time?
No, I always like both. Yeah, I mean, I like doing different things because I get sick of one and then I can do the other.
I like that answer. Cool.
Okay. Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, I'm rather impatient, so I just, I like to do one thing, and then I get sick of it, and then I'll write something else.
Okay, so I have a question for you with regards to self-publishing. Is there, because when you self-publish, there's quite a bit of steps involved to get everything ready to be released. Is there any aspect of that you find more tedious or time-consuming, or you flat out hate than the others?
Yeah, actually, which was formatting. And I've got a formatter, and I often say that in my next life I'm going to marry him.
Okay, and my final question for you would be is, what advice would you give an aspiring writer that is looking to self-publish? I mean, do you have like a list of do's and don'ts?
Yeah, if you're looking to self-publish, and the first thing, I've published blog posts which are fairly popular about, rules of self-publishing, or, these things is what you've got to do. And my first rule and the second rule and the third rule and the fourth rule and the fifth rule are all learn to write first.
Perfect. Well, that concludes my questions. Lindsay, I'm going to toss it over to you.
All right. Well, we're going to jump into marketing stuff here. I'm going to kind of ask you what you've been doing and what's been successful, and then I'll pass you over to Joe at the end to ask you sort of like what's your take on what's going on now and what's going to be working in the future. Congratulations on the Writers of the Future win. I think if you're in the top 3, you get in the anthology. Is that how it works every quarter?
Yeah, that's how it works. There are 3 per quarter, and they get like something like 2,000 entries per quarter, or maybe it's even more now. That's what it was when I won. The top 3 get to go to the workshop and get published in the anthology. So I was first in my quarter, and then you get to go to the workshop, and that's really quite valuable because you meet a lot of people, and you really make contacts with people that you otherwise would never meet as a beginning writer. So yeah, I found it really quite valuable.
Yeah, for anybody who's listening who never submitted short stories to magazines or contests like that, that's a super competitive one for sure. I know I sent a couple in back in like 2005 or something, and they ignored me. They didn't see my brilliance, if you can imagine that. But yeah, so for marketing stuff, I was saying before the show, one of the reasons I was excited to have you on is that you've been saying on K-Words that you actually make a lot more money from some of the other platforms rather than Amazon, which is sort of the opposite of how many people, well, maybe get some momentum on Amazon, but just can't seem to crack Kobo or Apple or Barnes & Noble. So I guess my first question is just, what do you think's been different for you, and is there anything special you've done to make sales on those sites?
No, actually, but I do have a couple of things that I have noticed. In the first place, it helps enormously especially in Apple, especially in Kobo. I don't know about Barnes & Noble. I'm not really that familiar with Barnes & Noble. It helps enormously to actually go to the sites and see how they work. Google Play is another one where you've just got to go and poke around, not just once, but a couple of times, and go there regularly to see what happens. How do the top hundreds work? How do the genres work? How do the blurbs work? How do the just what happens if especially with a site where you get fairly regular feedback like Draft to Digital, because I don't have a Mac, so I don't upload to Apple Direct. I'm not in the US or in the UK, so I can't upload to Barnes & Noble Direct. So I do it through Draft to Digital or Smashwords, and you've got to go to those sites and see what happens when you sell a copy. What happens? You'll upload your book, it doesn't have a ranking, and then someone buys a copy and the ranking jumps by how much? How does it get put into categories? How far down the category list does it end up? I mean, you've really got to spend a fair amount of time just looking at the lists and see what the sites do with your listings. And then you've got to read up on the site, on how they operate and how what categories they have. Look at the top 100s of each of those sites and see what they look like, and especially with regards to pricing, because one of the things about Amazon is that it's just a giant bargain basement. It's full of 99-cent titles. I can't sell my 99-cent titles for that I'm worth my life on Kobo. Everything I sell there is $6.99 or more because it's just a lower price titles just don't sell on a lot of those platforms, unless maybe it's heavily supported by the site itself. But if you just put something up, look at the top 100, see what are the prices like, what are the covers like. You might consider even doing things like different covers or having different blurbs or putting different categories or putting different prices just to suit whatever is there. I find a lot of people say, well, I don't sell on this site, but then they don't even know how the site works. And then they come back to to ask, why are the rankings all funny on Kobo, and what's so, weird about it? Why is it so weird? And they've never really looked at their sites, and then they wonder why they don't actually sell there.
Sure, and that's a good point about pricing. I think I've listened to Mark from Kobo. I'll mangle his last name if I try to say it, but Kobo Mark on a couple of podcasts, and he's mentioned that they kind of actually have a merchandise person who will hand select titles to showcase when they do their promotions, and that all things being equal, they want to sell something that costs more because Kobo makes more. So I know I had a box set there that you did really well with a promotion recently, and I think I saw you on there too with your Icefire Trilogy box set for the Boxing Day promotion or something like that. Do you have any thoughts of I know I started selling on the other platforms when I made a first book perma-free. Is that part of a strategy that you also do, is the perma-free book 1 in some of your series?
It is, but I was actually doing comparatively better when it wasn't free. And at the moment I'm doing like rolling promos where I'll make it free and then I won't make it free for a while. So another thing about those sites is that the rankings tend to be a lot more sticky. So what people used to do on Amazon is, make a book free, get a lot of downloads, shoot up in the rankings, and then put the price back on and sell copies. That actually still works. Because the once a book, especially on Barnes & Noble, once a book is up there in the rankings, it takes a long time to go down. It's not like Amazon, you're up and down within a day or two if you're running a promo or something. So there's tends to be a lot less churn, and you can still use that to your advantage. The other thing is with with Google Play and Kobo, that they will show you rankings according to the country you're in, so it's all very highly regional. So you can't really tell what happens in other countries unless you do difficult things with proxy servers, which I have no idea how to do. But it's they're all regional rankings, and you have to kind of understand that. Kobo will do, and Apple also will do promotions, but you have to be invited to take part, which you can do by tailoring your book to the site. And these people like Mark hangs out at the Kindle boards, and you sort of show yourself as a knowledgeable person and kind to or interested in promoting elsewhere than Amazon, and you'll quite likely get an invitation to take part in these promotions, because I'm sure they're always looking for different people. They can't always keep promoting the same people. So yeah, it's the promotions at Kobo, the higher pricing, and then looking at how sites list things and just tailoring your descriptions to that. Uploading direct where you can, especially, I know for Kobo they give priority to titles that go direct with them. I know Apple does the same, and I'm looking at an Apple upload service at the moment, because you actually have to have a Mac, and I don't know, I think Macs are annoying, so I'm not actually going to buy one for it. But you can, there's services that where you can pay. I'm looking at something like $30 per manuscript. It's a one-off. and then have your book listed there through this service, and they have their whatever hardware they need, and they can upload it for you. I'll see how that works. So,
Right.
you know, other than that, I mean, people are always asking on their Kindle boards, you know, what sites do you advertise at? And I don't actually advertise an awful lot. I don't really think that there are any sites that make a giant impression on any of those retail sites. They're much more sites for readers. They're much more sites for people who go there because they want to buy your book, because they know your name, and not people who tend to browse an awful lot. That's just my feeling. I mean, I'm a Kobo customer myself. I go there and I buy whatever I want. I don't tend to browse. I just tend to go and buy whatever I want to buy.
Right, and that's a good point. I think in this last year, especially, Kobo has started doing, like, seems like every month they'll send out a, you know, we're doing a little promotion, 35% off, and it helps you get your book in front of more readers. And I was trying to think, how would a new writer that's not in the loop get on this mailing list? And I think I was looking at the Kobo Writing Life blog, and nobody hardly comments on it. So I think just try to get on their radar over there, and they always seem to be really looking for new authors to help out.
They do.
Let me ask.
So you read the blog and you comment, and then you also make sure with Kobo they tend to be more interested in listing higher priced titles because they make more money.
Right, for sure. It's not just like Amazon's just all automated. There are actually people kind of
There
trying to
are.
put together a storefront there and do a good job for the readers. If I can ask you a quick question about Google Play, I know that's one that a lot of people don't even try because there have been people saying that they change the prices on your books. What's
They
been
do.
your experience there?
Well, it's not a huge seller. I mean, have been months that Kobo is 90% of my income. Google Play is fairly small, but I know some people who do very well on it. It tends to be. I'm doing some experiments where I tend to put some lower price material on there because I've heard people say people buy mostly like music and apps, and they tend to be like $2.99, so people want to buy cheaper things. But they do change the prices on their books, and there's a giant thread at the Kindle boards that has you know, what prices you need to put in. I think they discount by as much as 23% or something. But the thing is, if you want to book at say $2.99, you list it for $3.99. They discount it to $2.99, but they will actually pay you your commission over the $3.99. And other than that, it's fairly easy. It's still quite small, so it's fairly easy to actually rank. Their search capacity is absolutely woeful. So what people tend to do is put their keywords at the back of the blurb, which helps a lot. And yeah, that's basically there's been a lot of fear about Google Play. People saying they might make your book free, which is true, and then Amazon will price match, which is also true. But for some people, that doesn't really matter. You know, for some people, it's been not very good because their book, that's their best seller on Amazon. But you know, if your sales on Amazon are not really crash hot like mine, then I basically don't really care. If Google Play is then going to make my book free and then still pay me on all the downloads, then I'm pretty happy. And as soon as they they stop making the book free, Amazon price matches back up, and you know, it's no problem really. But for some people, it has been problematic. That is something they will do, and then Amazon will price match.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting though. I am going to try it out. I've kind of stayed away from it because I was a little worried about that. But over on the writing podcast, I was talking to Adam Poe, and he's been in there, and he's one of those guys that figured out, you know, put in the keywords, it actually works. And you know, he's saying he's making about $1,600 a month over there. That's, you know, for him, he makes more on Amazon still, but that's become like his second best store, I think. So
yeah,
something to check out.
The danger is what happened last year. I mean, not last year in October when when Kobo remodeled their site. They had this major software stuff up, and all the books, a lot of books were put in the wrong categories, which I'm sure is the reason why there were, books as children's books, or erotica was being sent to retailers in England as children's books, which I'm sure had something to do with the fact that there was just something wrong with the designation of categories on the Kobo site. After that happened, my sales on Kobo basically took a big nosedive, and they really went to show how important it was that I still had sales elsewhere, and that I hadn't withdrawn from other places. And so when I'm looking at these people who try to sell exclusively on Amazon, I'm thinking, if Amazon does something or something happens to your book, and it doesn't even have to be because Amazon doing something to your site, but some sort of thing happens, and all of a sudden your sales are gone, which will happen overnight. And what are you going to do if you can't list anywhere else? So that's really what worries me about it. What happens is, when the Barnes & Noble sales are not really that good at the moment, but then the Google Plus sales are better and the Apple sales are better, and then Apple goes down and one of the others goes up, and it's a bit of an insurance thing, really.
Right. I think that's definitely important if you become to rely on that income too. It would make me a little nervous if Amazon was all I had, for sure.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and jump over to, I wanted to ask you about cover art, because I've noticed, I see your signature on keyboards, that you've tinkered around and recently done new covers for your Ice Fire trilogy. Do you do your own covers, or what's your kind of tactics for cover art?
Oh, yeah, cover art is a bit of a, I don't know, I tend to be really, I wouldn't say fussy, but I can't stand being dicked around by people. I had a number of people who, sometimes it just didn't work, and other times they just couldn't give me a time when it was going to be ready, and and of course there are some people on the Kindle boards who are really great cover designers and do really great work, but I just really didn't feel that. I don't know, maybe I'm just too much of a control freak about what my covers look like, and so I just decided to do my own. I would just love it to give cover art to someone else and say, look, just do this. But then again, I know I've done it a few times, and I just hate the result. It just, that doesn't really make me feel good. And the other thing is that you might have a really great cover and paid a couple of $100 for it, and then it turns out for some reason it doesn't work. And I'd like to be able to quickly change it if it doesn't work, or if there is something wrong, or if I decide to rebrand the series, or I redid those covers because the original covers were the first ones I ever did, and their resolution was just not big enough to enlarge to new standards, and I needed to do new versions. And Apple wants 1400 pixels, and they were only 500 wide, and it just wasn't good enough. And the images that I used to make up those covers weren't good enough, so I had to redo them. I do them myself, but I would love it if I could just hand that problem to someone else, but I'm not really sure that's actually going to happen, so I think I'm too much of a control freak.
Yeah, I think it's tough, especially with science fiction and fantasy too, because you have to create this, mystical out there world, and I envy like the thriller people and the romance people. They can just put like a knife on the front and with some blood dripping down it. That's for the thrillers, not the romances, but. But anyway, jump into the next topic. Have you done anything with social media? What do you think's proving effective for you if you're doing like Twitter and Facebook and whatnot?
I do Twitter. I don't do Facebook much. I just do Twitter as a sort of a sounding off thing. It's not really. I don't tend to market a lot on Twitter. I do mention when books are out or when they're on special. But at the moment, I don't think I've mentioned any books of mine for a couple of weeks at least. I don't know. I just do Twitter for the fun thing, and I like reaching out to people and readers, or just basically science fiction and fantasy readers on Twitter, or just people who live in my area. I actually found the best thing I've done for Twitter and getting followers is to take the fact that I'm an author out of my bio. Because people hate being sold to, and I mean there's a discussion thread going on at the Kindle boards at the moment. People trying to do the hard sell on Twitter and sending people DMs, and I mean that really turns me off. Twitter is not for the hard sell; it's for reaching out to people. I've sold a lot of books to people I've met on Twitter because I chat, and I mean I send pictures, and I'm a bit of an amateur photographer, so I go to places and then I post pictures, and people follow me because of the pictures, and then they probably go, oh, she's an author, so next thing someone needs a book, then they might buy my book. I don't know. I mean, I think that's how it works, but I'm not really using it to specifically sell my books.
Okay, I think that's I think that's a pretty good strategy. Actually, I'm kind of the same way. When I have a new release, I'll throw a link out there. But I follow some authors because in the beginning I made that mistake of following anyone who follows me back, or vice versa. And then when I look over in the mainstream and you just see, buy my book, here's my book, 99 cents, buy my book, and I never talk to these people, so I'm kind of gradually trying to unfollow them. Maybe they won't notice.
Yeah.
I do the same. I've unfollowed quite a few.
The guys wanted me to ask you, have you done anything with merchandising like Cafe Press or Zazzle, or tried any other ways besides just the ebooks and paperbacks to make money?
No, not really.
All right. Have you done any book signings? Do you do anything in your hometown in Australia, or has any of the local stuff, if you've tried that, has it been effective?
What I do, there's a con series that's called Supernova, which I think is the equivalent of your Comic-Con.
Okay.
There's ones in a number of, in all the main capital cities, and the last few years I've been going to that. I sometimes go to the science fiction and fantasy writers' cons, but they're more like social things that don't tend to sell an awful lot there, because you're mainly, same thing, mainly marketing to authors, because the people who come there are authors. But the Supernovas are really quite great, because most of them, they get something like 50,000 people through the door, and most of them will be there for the movie stuff and the game stuff. But you get a lot of people who you wouldn't otherwise meet, and they're just. So someone was saying something here.
Yeah, Jeff was wondering, is it as crazy or as insane as the American Comic-Cons?
Well, I don't actually know, but there's a lot of people in costume, and I know that my daughter wants to come just for that, and she's already trying to decide which character of Game of Thrones she's going to be dressed at. So I suppose the answer might be yes. There's a lot of people in costume, and it's quite funny. It's held in winter, and it's not by your standards, but it's actually quite cold. And you see people, girls walking around in Princess Leia costumes, whereas really it's not really warm enough for a bikini.
Nice. All right.
How about
well,
those that shouldn't be wearing that gold bikini?
I have just one last question. I kind of wanted to ask you about this promotion you just did, where you did a bunch of books, got 99-cent titles from a whole bunch of authors and promoted it on your site. Could you tell us a bit what you did and if that was effective?
Yeah, actually, I think it was. It's always really hard to measure the effect this sort of thing has, because quite often it's quite spread out when you first start talking about it, and then the actual promotion. But I think I was quite happy with the results, and I know that a lot of other authors have been too. I just think it's part of it's all a cumulative thing. As someone at the Kindle boards who sells quite well said that she started selling well when she started promoting other people's books, not just her own. And I thought there's something to be said about that, because you can buy these ads, and your books will the books will go up in rank, and then 2 days later they're back where you started. And it's sort of like an emotional roller coaster. And the reason why I started this was to try and find a way of stopping that, of finding another way of a more like a native kind of selling rate that is more sustained, and getting your name out there. And so that's why I started doing it.
Yeah, I was actually just did a big blog post on kind of what I think people will be doing this year for marketing, and I really think the networking with other author stuff is, I mean, people are already doing that, and I think it's proving really effective. If you get, I guess when you did it, did you have the other authors kind of also promote the big list of books, and you had it listed on your site, right?
Yeah, I had it listed on my site, and I just looked at it. The actual post got something 200 and something retweets and 300 and something Facebook mentions or shares, and I think that sort of stuff is effective, because some of those will be quite influential people who have a lot of people, that a lot of people read their blogs, and a lot of people for whatever reason. And so they may not buy your books immediately, but they know that you exist, and I think that's the most important thing. Just rather than promotions being about immediately, people buying your books, that promotions are about trying to get them to know you as an author, and getting them to think, oh, that's an interesting person. Next time I go and buy some books, maybe I should try that particular author. And I think that's more important than trying to get people to buy a 99-cent book, or getting people to download a free one, because otherwise you'll just be on the advertising roller coaster forever, and this is really tiring. I just find that really tiring. You do the BookBub thing or something, and you get thousands of downloads, and then sort of it slowly goes back down, and you think, what actually has that achieved? And you just don't really know, because a lot of those people, you don't actually know who they are, or this is a way of actually finding out like who people are, who your readers are. I've taken part in other promotions like that, where people have promoted on their websites, and then you get people to put their names on your mailing list, and things like that. And I think that's going to be quite effective, just to promote yourself as an author, rather than to try and sell a particular book.
Definitely, and I'll, I think from newer authors, I'll often have people ask me, well, how do I get invited to these networking events? And I always tell them, if you don't get invited, you have to be the organizer. You're not on anybody's radar yet, because if you haven't been blogging or podcasting, or you haven't been out there that long, that's just kind of how it is. Nobody knows who you are, authors or readers. But I've seen a lot of people that if you do the organization yourself and you go invite people, a lot of people will say yes, because even if it's a six-figure author, they're still worried about their sales. They're worried about what Kindle Unlimited is doing or whatever. So a lot of people will join in.
And at the moment, all the box sets are all the rage, and people said, oh, why don't you start one? But I didn't want to do that because of all the tax nonsense that you have to do for the US tax, and I just really don't want to have anything to do with that. So I thought, well, I don't want to do that, but I can do a joint promotion. I can do that.
Definitely.
So you have to decide what it is that you like to do, because obviously you can't do everything. But then you'll find that people will invite you to do other things as well.
Right, and that's a good part. Once you're kind of on people's radars because you were in a group thing together, or you invited them, then you'll get, let's do the February Valentine's Day Facebook group thing, or whatever's next up.
Yeah. And
Right.
that's also a thing that I would like to comment, because then that also means that you've got to be on Facebook, and then this means that I've got to be on Google Plus. So if there is a new social network, you just got to go out there and create an account, even if you do very little with it, because the next thing someone will actually come and ask you, to take part on this particular social network. And it helps if you have a little bit of footprint on the network before you get asked.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to make an account, even if you're like I'm horrible on Google Plus. I remember like once every 3 months to say something on there, but
I'm even more horrible because my blog auto posts to Google Plus.
well, see that makes it so at least you're posting.
Yeah,
But
well, it looks like I am.
all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and hand you over to Joe now, and he's going to ask some more questions about where you think things are going. Thanks.
Okay.
Yep. We some of the stuff I'll be going. We sort of went over a little bit of my stuff, but we're going to go into more detail. But at first, I'd like to ask, do you think that science fiction and fantasy offers any unique challenges in marketing versus something like romance or mystery? Because Smashwords just released their top sellers list again, and as usual, the top about 90% of the list was romance. So, do you think that marketing something besides romance has got a special challenge?
Well, yes and no, because I really think, I mean, people might shoot me, but I really think that especially the science fiction readers are a little bit more of a cynical bunch. They tend to stick. They tend to stick to authors they already know. They tend to shop by author. They don't tend to race after the latest trend so much. They tend to be a little bit more cynical about their advertising. I don't know if that's what you feel too, but that's what I feel. So I tend to concentrate with any marketing, and it also it just keeps working on trying to market myself as an author, and I think that will always work. I'm doing things like first in series free, doing things like blog posts or popular subjects. So sort of market more at the long term. In that respect, I don't even want to compete with them because they sell to a different market. They sell to people who love their novels being 99 cents, people who churn through, a book a day. I just think we, as with science fiction and fantasy, are marketing to a slightly different readership. I'm sure there is some overlap, but also, there is a marked difference.
I would agree. I've found that certainly science fiction readers tend to have a series or an author, or like you'll see people who will just stick to just even a franchise like Star Wars or Star Trek, which are enormous, but still, there's a lot more fidelity I've found. And also I've found, I think with romance that differs from sci-fi and the rest, is that in romance, you're essentially buying it for the prize inside. Like there's a handful of scenes around which the rest of the book has been written, and those scenes are going to be there, so you just sort of dig through until you get them. Whereas same thing with mystery. Mystery has got who done it. Once that question's answered, it's going to be answered. So it's a little bit more of a simple formula to consume. Whereas the fantasy and the sci-fi, you're constructing whole universes, and there's who knows what you're going to find. So it's a little bit more cautious to get in there.
Well, that's why I think series are especially strong in science fiction and fantasy, because once you've already established a series and people love that series, they like it when they don't need to invest in learning to understand and read another series or another world. So they really like series. So that's another thing. You've got to write in series. Then making the first one free or making the first one 99 cents, and I do a little bit of advertising, but not that much, really.
On the subject of making the first one for you, you said that you cycle in and out sales like that. Do you tend to only have one book free at a time, or you try to do all series starters free?
No, most of the series starters are free, not all of them. At the moment, especially the slightly older books. But yeah, I mean, I've got 4 books free at the moment. I'm sort of experimenting a little bit with making them paid again. But you know, as you all know, it's not really that easy at Amazon. You've got to send them nasty poking emails to see, hey, you know, I've made this paid again. And that's after me sending them nasty emails saying, hey, why is this free only in the US? All my sales in Germany have died because you made it paid again. So I just, you know, tend to just leave it as is. But yeah, I'm doing a little bit of experimenting on D2D and Kobo to see how it goes. You know, what happens if I put price back on? And to be honest, nothing much happens actually. Sales just keep going.
That's good to know.
Because I think the market's different.
Absolutely. All right, so let's say that you're watching trends, and obviously if you're an author and you're hoping to be successful, you're going to have to watch trends. Let's say that there was a subset of sci-fi or fantasy that suddenly starts to skyrocket in popularity, like just any random thing that already existed before, but now is starting to catch on, like post-apocalyptic sci-fi or lighthearted satirical fantasy. Would you ever attempt to write to a trend, or do you feel like it's better just to write as the best book you can? Is quality better than trendiness?
Well, if I like the trend, yeah, sure enough. I mean, because I don't operate in a vacuum either. I read those books, and if I actually like the trend, yeah, sure enough, I'll jump on it. But if I don't like it, I'm not going to write it. I'm not going to read it either. So I might try one book and decide, no, this is not for me. So I'll just go like the whole vampire thing just left me cold. So I let that go. Other things that there's a lot of books at the moment brought out that are of the science fiction, the space thriller sort of variety, and I read those books and I think, oh yeah, I can do that. But just only if I feel like I can actually answer the trend and do reasonably well in it, as in write a quality book and one that fits within the genre. I mean, if I don't like the trend, then I just go like, I don't want to do this.
I have the same policy. I've seen a lot of books come and go, like trends come and go, that I wish I could write in, but I'm not even going to try it if I think I couldn't do a good job. Particularly because until recently I didn't have the time to be wasting to essentially write a throwaway book. So yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah.
You already said that you don't like to be involved in things like multi-author bundles or anthologies because of the problem of distributing the money. But what about other sort of trendy methods like now? A lot of people have been working on, say, serial novels. What do you think of things like that?
Well, I've got I mean, there's been endless discussions at the Kindle boards about the difference between a series and a serial, and I just think it's a bit of a nonsense argument. A serial is mainly, was up till now, used for TV programs, and series is books. I mean, by some of their definitions, the Game of Thrones is a serial, a lot of novels. I mean, I'm not talking about the TV series, and I mean the whole argument is nonsense as far as I'm concerned. If you're talking about a serial, which is a chopped up novel, I don't really want to do that. But I have a series which you could probably call a serial, which is slightly shorter novels because they're easier to write. It's just a very big story, and each book deals with a different aspect of the story or the next lot of, until my characters come to another sort of defining point. And each of the books are they're short novels. I suppose you could call that a serial, but in the past they would have been called a series, and a lot of the science fiction and fantasy series are not self-contained books anyway. So I just really think the serial versus series discussion is really nonsense, to be honest.
There does seem to be sort of a terminology problem in writing. Just almost every part of writing seems to have some sort of terminology issue. I've had to deal with the difference between a novel, a novella, and a novelette. Like, somewhere someone's got a list of word counts and which ones they fall into, but no one can agree where that list is. So, yeah, I can see writing a series of books and someone else accusing you of nickel and diming them because it's a serial, and
Yeah.
it's a black hole.
Yeah, I just don't even want to go in that discussion. It's just nonsense, really.
Yeah. Okay, so are there any new marketing techniques that you've seen that you'd like to try, or that maybe you've recently started using that you're excited about?
But the marketing, I mean, the one that I've started is I'm going to be doing more of these joint promotions, because I think that works really well. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I just whenever someone opens a new social network, I usually open an account and sort of poke at it a few times and see what it does. There's people who've tried Facebook ads or Goodreads ads or any of that, and I don't know. I just really believe in natural growth. One of the things I want to concentrate on is growing my mailing list, and I really think it's very important for authors to keep control of their own audience and not to give it out to other sites or to have other people handle it for you. I really think it's important that that's one thing that makes self-publishing so successful. That is that you have control of your own audience.
I have to agree. And go ahead. Yeah, mailing list. That's one lesson that I sort of picked up just prior to starting this podcast that I kind of wish I'd done earlier in my career, because the mailing list is a tremendously useful tool. It's very direct. It's got a pretty good good return. I love getting replies to the mailing list. So I have to agree that for me, the mailing list is a new and exciting marketing technique. It just
I used to, I mean, this is like more than 10 years ago. I started when the internet first opened to the public. I had an online bookshop, or that was mail order at that time, of scientific books, and I made a mailing list, and at that time there was no MailChimp, so I did it all by hand, and there also was no opt-in and double opt-in and all that sort of stuff. So I went and just did that myself, not even realizing what I was doing, and I already found that was very successful by getting sales and say, well, look, I've bought this and this and this and this is in it, and then 5 minutes later, people would email me back and say, well, I'll have that one and I'll have that one, and that was very successful at the time. So I really know the power of mailing lists is quite incredible.
Yes, indeed. All right. So we've spoken a bit about exclusivity and how you think it's a danger, particularly for like you, who don't rely upon Amazon sales as much as many of us do. You clearly would never go exclusive with Amazon. But if one of your really big sellers was to make a pitch to you or offer you some special promotion opportunities, if you were to go exclusive with them, would you ever consider exclusivity with even a single book?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, exclusivity is rarely forever. And say if Amazon came to me and said, oh, we really like this book, and would you put it in Kindle Unlimited for, I mean, it's only for 3 months, so why not? None of the other retailers seem to have exclusivity as part of their business plan. If they did, I mean, I would look at it the same way and say, well, look, I'd be happy to give you exclusivity for a certain period of time, and you know, this is you know, what are you going to do for me in return? And yeah, so why not? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd
But I
say this.
wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it for everything.
Yeah, putting all your eggs in one basket is a dangerous tactic, and it's sort of interesting that no one really else besides Amazon has tried exclusivity or tried to lure people into exclusivity. I have
And
one just go ahead.
yeah, but that is what I think about the Kindle Unlimited. I think from what I'm seeing in there is that the offering of books is actually quite, you know, quite poor compared to other subscription services, because of a lot of authors don't want to do the exclusivity thing, and as soon as they drop that, I'm sure that they would see a lot better subscription rates and retention rates of subscribers, because a lot of people will just go like, yeah, and then they realize that there's a lot of short stories and a lot of articles in there, which are very fine if you like reading that sort of stuff, but most readers don't. So, you know, I've put a couple of short stories in there, and I'm actually getting borrows on the things where stories that, you know, where analogs already paid me $500 for the story. You know, any $2 I can get for it's just sitting there. It's just, that's all. You know, I'm happy. But I would never put my main series in there unless Amazon said, look, well, we're going to do this major marketing for you, or if Google Play or Apple or Kobo said, but they don't seem to ask for exclusivity, and I think exclusivity is a bit of a silly requirement, to be honest.
I absolutely agree. All right, this is my last question. It's sort of a broad one, but there's been a lot of talk lately in many articles about how it's getting harder for indies because there's more competition now, and there's lower switch over to e-readers from, you know, the gold rush that there was, and traditional publishers are starting to bring their prices down into the indie range. Quirks to exploit Amazon and the like are getting harder to find and getting closed up. Do you think it's still a good time to be an indie, and do you think that there's going to need to be any major changes for indies in order to continue to succeed?
I think that I don't know. I mean, people talk about all these gold rushes, and I was never part of any of them. So you know, I've always done the hard work and to build my readership from the ground up, built my own readership, to, you know, do the mailing list thing and get people to subscribe to my blog and my website, and you can still do that and do vastly better than if you sold your book to a publisher. Maybe it is getting harder, but I think it's never really been easy. And there's just been a couple of people who've had big breakout successes, and some of those have disappeared just as quickly. And I think that it's the people who are in there for the long run, people who write series, people who work on their own audiences. They're the ones who are, in the end, going to be better off. And I don't think that's ever really been any different. I don't know even about things like quality control, or people are going to read the authors they like. So as an author, you've got to make sure that people like your work and that you show your work to as many different people as possible, which means you've got to market in some way, and my way of marketing is just make one free and obviously write series, and then yeah, do a little bit of advertising, but I don't do much. But I don't think there's going to be any major changes. If you are, your business is trying to find the holes in Amazon, yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be big changes, but I'm not really that interested because I don't want to spend that much time doing it. I'd much rather spend my time writing. And making covers and looking after my own readership, rather than trying to game, or I wouldn't even say game, but trying to find the holes and the loopholes and selling categories in Amazon and fiddling around with keywords. You know, do a little bit of it, but in the end, I think good, honest, fiction, decent, chunky novels in series, first one free, getting people to sign up to a mailing list, have an attractive website, write on a blog, and that's going to always be a tactic that will, in the end, get you, some success. And, in terms of getting a breakout success, I think that's just basically sheer luck.
That does seem to be the case. Even when I appeared on the ebook scene, the thing that made it seem feasible to me was when I got picked up by a random blog for no reason whatsoever. I didn't even pursue it. So yeah, breaking out is luck based, but hanging in there seems to be entirely based on hard work.
Yeah, and if you hang out there, and there will be more chances that you will, get that mention or something that will make a lot of difference. And it's all a cumulative thing, really. And just being there is turning up is half of the work, basically.
Absolutely the case, and that finishes my list of questions. So, is there anything you'd like to add now? Any websites you'd like people to visit, or any books you'd like to talk about before we close up?
What are you working on right now?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
What are you working on right now?
What I'm working on right now? Well, I'm actually about to get returned from the formatter. Book 3 of the Ambassador series, which is a space opera thriller. And started book 1, which was picked up by a publisher. I actually retained the ebook rights. And book 2 was published in January last year, so this is the third book. It's almost done, and after that I'm going to go back to writing some fantasy. I really love the space opera. It's in a world that I've already. I have another series that's in the same world, and there's just a lot of scope, different types of people. There's a little bit more action based than the other series. There's lots of chases and shootings and all the good space opera stuff. I really enjoy working on that, and I mean the characters after 3 books, there will be more books. The characters after 3 books, they tend to grow on you, and they tend to grow with you, and I really love seeing that sort of thing.
Very nice. And what's it called?
It's called, this is the Ambassador series. Each Scene Red is the first one, which starts very explosively with an explosion, and how my character is getting his way out of it. Book 2 is it's called Raising Hell, where my character visits a planet with a very rigid social structure. Where it's actually a bit too hot for humans to live, so he has to deal with both all sorts of protective gear that he's wearing, and the fact that these people have this very rigid social structure, which is a little bit like dogs. They have to, wolves probably, they have to establish dominance. So one character, it's not necessarily a good or bad thing, but one of the persons has to be dominant and the other one subservient, and so this is part of their society. He's dealing with that, and in this third book that I'm just about to publish on is a very long time ago. Something really bad happened to a planet, and a couple of ships left. 2 of them were found later, and one of them was never heard from again. And they are now back, and these people are highly technologically advanced, and yeah, they just have to make my character and his society have to make sense out of where they've been and whether they're telling the truth, which is most likely not. And so there's a whole lot of dancing around and diplomacy and lack thereof going on. So that'll be continued in another book that I'll be writing after I finish the fantasy, the next installment of my fantasy series.
Very cool. I look forward to it.
Yep. So I think that that brings us to the end. I'd like to thank you very much, and maybe Lindsay wants to take us out.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you, Patty, for coming on and being our second guest, our first author. We appreciate it. And we'll put the link to your site and to your books in the blog post that goes up with the video, so everybody can check it out. For anybody else, I have to remind you guys of the website because I always forget to say this. We are at marketingsff.com. You can also find us on iTunes. We're the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, and that is also our YouTube channel. So come check us out there, and if you get time to leave a review, we would definitely appreciate it. Have a great day, everybody.
Okay.